Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Lead Pastor Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. This is Easter edition. Extra Takes.
It is,
Matt.
Yes. We got extra energy for it.
Yeah, and I have not even showered today. So I
mean,
woke up early for a meeting, and we're doing this earlier than what we normally do.
Yeah.
I'm leaving for Egypt.
You are.
Yeah.
But you have showered since Easter.
Yeah.
Because today's Tuesday morning. So, yeah, just
So
checking on you.
Yeah, I have showered since Easter.
Okay.
If not, you probably would definitely be smelling it.
All right. So we're excited to get into all the things of Easter today. And as always, we will dig a little deeper into the cutting room floor of what didn't quite make it, and there's some great quotes that we're going to get into that I'm excited for us.
There's probably a lot of things that didn't make it. So
yeah,
but we have to have brevity today because I have a flight to catch.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah, you better hold me to it, or I'm going to miss my flight. So
this is a continuation of our Empowered series, and this was called A Whole New World. This is Acts 17, 16 through 34. And yes, it was Easter weekend, March 30th and 31st, 2024. So the main point is humanity doesn't need a better, more enhanced world. It needs a whole new world. And you outlined three principles of how Paul engaged the old world and told them about the new world. So first, we should be brokenhearted over the old world. Second, we should be bridge builders between the old and the new world. And third, we should be bright and bold witnesses, declaring and demonstrating the new world. And where we ended was this application of, okay, what now?
Yeah.
Right? And you said, repent there's an opportunity to repent. So you clearly gave us the gospel message, and then we had this application of pull your phones out. Yeah. So we did have some numbers.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be a great way to start there, because as you said, this was just a practical way for any of us to be engaged, and this wasn't for just a small group of people, but this was for anybody. Right? Anybody. All could participate, and as a reminder, there were three responses. First was, I know Christ, I'm on the team. Second is, I received Jesus today. And third, I would like to learn more. So a couple numbers, 81 people accepted Jesus.
Yeah.
And 106 wanted to learn more. We can praise God for that.
Amen.
About a third of the people that participate in worship service actually participated in that, in the text-in.
So I think just shy of 4,300 in the gatherings,
and 4,600 with kids.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah. It was a wonderful weekend. Tons of great energy. Yeah. My wife got to participate in the choir.
Yeah.
First time in many years. So it was great for my girls to experience that too.
Cool.
So let's start with that first question, is we should be brokenhearted over the old world. As I was kind of going through this, some weeks there's specific questions I have, other weeks it's quotes, and this is a week where we really have just more quotes. So you said, and it was a question you asked to all of us, does the old world break your heart, or are you just mad and angry at it? And then you asserted it's hard to love a world that you are mad and angry about.
Yeah.
Mad and angry at. So talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially particularly in our context, as America has progressed in the direction it's going, and you kind of have the church, or many in the church, kind of still rooted in where the church is at, it's easy to get angry at where you see things going. And I've said things like this before, is that you cannot reach someone that you are angry at.
Yeah.
that you blame them for your discomfort. And so that's where I feel like there's a lot of Christians out there that they're really uncomfortable with where things are in the culture, and so they're looking for somebody to blame as someone rather than someone to reach. And that's what I really meant by that.
Well, and I think what that does is it helps us take a step back and realize, our purpose, recognize our purpose, but also what are the implications of that anger, right? And the implications of that anger is, wait, because that's not always the intention. The intention isn't to just separate, kind of stiff arm ourselves from society, but that's essentially what can happen is if we're just mad and angry.
Yeah, you could stiff arm yourself, and you don't want to engage. That's the thing is, so the whole reason why Jesus came is that he was broken over the world. Because if he's mad at the world, he's just going to judge it, burn it up, and just be done with it.
Right.
But what he did is that he's like, no, God demonstrates his own love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's why in the first service, and I because there was things that I had to cut, right?
Yeah.
So I cut it after Saturday, but in Matthew 9, where we see Jesus, he saw the crowds and had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So there's this idea that, Jesus is brokenhearted. Wow. He has this the Greek word is splugnodzomai or something like that. But it's like this deep inner-seated like brokenness that hits the bowels over people and their condition. And so that's what I pray that we are. And because I'm telling you, it's going to be easy. It's just easy to get mad at the world. It really takes a God-like love to love the world in its brokenness.
Right. Yeah, a God-like love that is not on our own power. Yeah. Which
is why I say you need to be brokenhearted, not bullheaded, because there's just a lot of people out there, they're just stubborn. A lot of Christians stubborn. They're not going to be brokenhearted, and which is part of the reason why you have a declining church, is that they're mad at the culture as opposed to broken over the culture. And so if you don't have this brokenness, this burden for a culture that is just mirroring and reflecting the old world,
right,
then you will find yourself disengaged.
Yeah.
Which then that leads to the number two of like, okay, so if you're disengaged, you're not going to be that bridge builder. Or if you're engaged to the point you're angry and mad, you'll destroy that bridge or burn that bridge rather than build the bridge. Because here's the thing, and this is why I say bridge builder, is that the culture's not building the bridge to us. So you have to understand and this is part of where like I could have put up the concentric circles again.
Yeah.
You have the kingdom of God, you have the kingdom of man. Well, the church is supposed to be the bridge. But if you remove the church, or you have a church that is just too holy and in some sense too mad and arrogant to reach the world, you literally have no bridge. And so the culture isn't going to be building the bridge to the kingdom. It's not like because the Bible talks about how there is none righteous, no, not one. Yeah. There's no one seeking after God. That's why God finds us. We don't find God. So that's why we have to be the bridge builders. And if we don't build the bridge, then the culture doesn't get reached. Wow. And that's why we have to be the ones that the only way you build the bridge is to be broken over the old world. So in some sense, they stack on one another, right?
Yeah, you have to have the first.
If you don't have the first, you don't get to the second.
And if you don't have the first, you try to get to the second as a bridge builder, and you're just going to do it wrong.
And then if you don't have the third, then you do what we talked about, what the bridge building isn't.
Right. So the bright and bold witness is required to make sure that you're building the bridge the right way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot to this.
There is a lot to it, and I wish I had more time.
Well, that's why we have.
Well, that's why, yeah. I mean, but to tell, because the 4,300 people ain't listening to this, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean, obviously, I think they got the gist, but
they did.
It does build. And I wanted to treat Easter like so I wanted to speak to people who are very far from the Lord, but use this sermon as a way to model for Christians what it looks like to engage a truly pagan, lost, pluralistic world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that second point about bridge building, before you talk about what bridge building is. You gave us a couple what bridge building isn't, and I thought that was really helpful. So I'll read these for us. It says, what a bridge builder isn't: someone who agrees with everything the other person believes or how they behave. That's not a bridge builder. Someone who applauds or accepts behaviors and beliefs that are detrimental to the other person. And someone who assimilates and joins what the other person does. Because to your point, that really misses being a bold witness, right? Declaring truth to them.
Yeah. Well, that's where you have to be. Again, I love the concept bridge builder. Like you are intentionally building something to connect to the other side.
Yeah.
But in agreeing, applauding, accepting, assimilating, you're not building anything. You are joining.
Yeah.
You're like, well, yay! You're accepting things that you know that God hates.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought. You look behind and there's no bridge.
There's no bridge because all you've done is you just jump ships.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, trying to get that, because I'm telling you, we're living in a day and age of polarization. We see that in our own culture, polarization. And there's really no middle ground anymore from a perspective. Sure, a lot of people live within the middle ground, but you have polarizing perspectives. Okay, well, so in the church, same thing, right? That you typically see. You either have people that are basically assimilating, agreeing, accepting this secular progressive world, and in some sense cheering them on as if, hey, if we can in some sense coddle them, then somehow they'll listen to us. But here's the thing: if you coddle them in their sin and then you try to tell them that they're a sinner, that just doesn't work. Again, that's not bridge building. Yeah. But then there are others that want to stand on their side and look over and like point their fingers, give them in some sense a sanctified middle finger, and burn the bridge.
Yeah, you stay there.
And what we see with Paul, there is a messy middle, and that messy middle, you're going to be misunderstood. You're going to be called a babbler because people aren't going to understand your categories. They're not going to understand your life, and then there will be people that go, oh my gosh, because the Spirit of God just gives them the eyes to see, like one of the leaders of the Areopagus. I mean, that's crazy. Like, he joined. Yeah. He's like, I believe you. And then others like, man, this is intriguing. This worldview, this storyline is intriguing. Yeah. We would love to hear you more about that.
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to, oh, thanks so much for supporting us. Oh, man. I mean, it's kind of like, well, because, again, Paul built the bridge of, he was driven by love. He was aware of his surroundings. He showed a cultural intelligence multiple ways. Like, in the cultural intelligence is seeing the idols, understanding the worldview, knowing what some of their own poets had said. I mean, there's this. So I actually try to model that. Because I try to model it by going to cities. I try to model it by sharing some movies or some TV shows. That
I'm Squatty Potty.
The Squatty Potty. Hey, I was thinking about this idea of the Scrub Daddy. Okay, so this is
Scrub Mama.
If I was ever, somebody sent me a picture that there is actually now Scrub Mamas and Scrub Babies. No lie.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Who knew?
But I was thinking about if I was ever going to do a comedy set on Scrub Daddy or something, I would actually start playing towards the dishwashers and the companies that have created dishwashers, like Kenmore.
Yeah.
So Ken wasn't going to be scrubbing the dishes. He was going to do more by putting it in the dishwasher. So, and then like, LE or J, JE. Or is
GE.
GE, not JE. Yeah, GE.
Yeah.
So you got Gerald Edwards, like he didn't want to scrub the dishes, so he created the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Or you have Larry Gordon, he's like, man, I'm just tired of scrubbing the dishes. I'm going to create a dishwasher.
Larry Gordon.
And so, anyway, so I thought I could have a little fun with that, of how all of these dishwashing companies, you could play with the whole name theme.
You're trying out new material. I like
new material.
I try out new material with my wife, and it goes over well. I try with others, and she'll be like, don't share that with others.
I think I could have had fun with it, but limited time. So
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
good.
just this cultural intelligence. But that was, I mean, because that was a way to connect too.
Right.
So we can connect we can connect. I mean, think about all the connecting points I had. America, mouse traps. Like we could go, oh yeah, scrub. We don't need a scrub daddy. We actually need a dishwasher. That revolutionized.
Yeah.
Right. Like think about think about communication throughout the years. We just didn't need Morse code. We got a telephone now. We got it is completely like it's turned the world upside down of how we communicate. What about transportation? So when the car was coming out, people completely rejected it because they were so tied to their horse and buggy. But now we got planes, trains, automobiles. We try to see how fast we can make planes. I mean, we can take people to the moon. Now, I mean, it's like we have some like incredible transportation that is completely revolutionized. And think about revolutionized is a far and drastic ways of thinking and behaving. So it's a far-reaching and drastic way of thinking and behaving. So if you think about some of these revolutionary, so there have been revolutionary products, and I didn't want to confuse people, but there have been revolutionary products that have completely transformed humanity. There have been these mousetraps, these better mousetraps that have enhanced humanity. And so what the resurrection is, it is a revolution to humanity because it transfers us from the old world into a new world. So that's another. I see again. If I had time, I could have had. If I had another 5 minutes, I could have tied all those together. But I just did an extra take. So you're welcome.
There you go.
You're welcome, family and friends.
So when you talked about what a bridge builder is, you talked about driven by God's love, aware of the surroundings, works towards a cultural intelligence. And that last one you said, ask one who can ask good questions.
Yeah.
And you had this statement, for far too long, the church has been on the defense as the culture has been asking and berating us with questions. And really, admittedly, some good questions, but many of the times gotcha questions.
Yeah.
So what are some questions that we may be able to start asking society to no longer just be on the defense?
Like how do you make sense of life? Like an inquisitive, like how, because we are in this day and age where there is no, and I've shared this idea before, there's no meta-narrative, there's no overarching story to help make sense of every little micro element of our life and thus our life. And so just how do you make sense of life? How do you make sense of suffering? Like what's your thought about that? Why do you think there is suffering? Do you think that there is an afterlife? What do you have hope? I mean, in some sense, asking all the questions that people ask us. But what is your solution?
Yeah, and I think a follow-up to a question like that would be, for me, where do those ideas come from?
Yeah, like where'd you get that? What's the source? Because that's part of where, like, if you have everybody building their own individual source, then there is no continuity.
Because that's where, often, we will be on the defense about our source, right? Having holes picked through, the Bible, isn't truthful. But if you ask a question like that, their sources aren't holding up to any sort of scrutiny.
And then, so if somebody's moral, or let's say they're a humanitarian, they do, kind of philanthropic events or deeds. Ask them why.
Yeah, why?
Because here's the thing, though, what you will find is that really throughout human history, if you read the history of civilizations, they're not doing good to people not like them. I mean, and then you have to be intellectually open to understand that the whole Western world, the whole idea of being nice and kind to your neighbor, the golden rule, was not started by Western civilization. It actually came as this revolutionary thought of Jesus. Because the Roman Empire wasn't doing that. Like, I'm telling you, I could give you, like, I'm reading this book and I've shared it, I'm almost done with it because I usually have 4 or 5 books at the same time.
Yeah.
But Bullies and Saints. I'm telling you, the Roman Empire's not taking care of those who are sick. They're not going into the cities when plagues hit. No, but the church did. So this idea of even doing philanthropic good to people not like you, they don't think like you, they don't dress like you, they don't talk like you, that doesn't have the same worldview as you. That did not just come out of humanity.
Right.
That came out of Jesus and the church.
Yeah.
Where do you think educational centers came from? Where do you think hospitals came from? That's, again, the whole idea of Western civilization. That's why in the Saturday service, and I just needed a cut. But in the Saturday service, I talked about how if Paul looked at America, he would see how the Enlightenment got together with some Christian values, got together and had a baby. Like, that's really the inception of America. The idea that man is free to build what he wants, but's going to use the ideas of God. Because you have to understand that many of the founding fathers were deists, which actually was a form of Stoicism. Is that they believed that there was, that there were gods out there, but that they did not interfere with humanity.
They were disconnected.
They were disconnected. Like Benjamin Franklin, he's a deist. He had great respect for people like George Whitefield, but he was a deist. He believed that God was out there on a cosmic journey. Thomas Jefferson, same thing. Deist, what did he do? He has a deist Bible. He cut all of the supernatural parts out of the Bible. Okay, so you have many of the founding fathers. They are a form of Stoicism, which we see here in Acts 17. That you have to understand that the way I would describe Stoicism is that they were a first century Jedi. So because they believed that there was kind of a deity, and if there were deities, not involved, but they also believed that they were pantheist. What that means is that God is everywhere, in everything, and everything. So that's why I call them first century Jedis, because Jedi is this kind of pantheistic kind of worldview where you get to use the Force, that you have to tap into this divine force and you get to use it, and then when you die, you're just absorbed into this force. That's what Stoicism believed. So deism is a form of Stoicism, but does believe that there is this kind of God creator out there, but on a cosmic journey, not interfering with the affairs of human beings. So that's where when you have America, the inception is you have this Enlightenment idea where humanity is bright enough to create a utopia, which means a perfect world, but they're going to combine that perfect world using Judeo-Christian values and tapping into this deity, this in some sense spiritual force, right? So Paul would have saw that. Yeah. So I have no idea where I was going with that, but I used all of that to what were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about asking good questions.
Asking good questions. Yes. Oh, so yes. But so the whole
You never do that.
I know, but
sorry, you never lose your spot. I admire that about you. Everybody always loses their spot when they're in conversation, and if I ask you two things, you always go back to both. So, anyways,
because I wanted to explain that, so you know, and I just didn't have time.
You just didn't have time,
And so, but to bring it all back, these are questions like, where do you think hospitals? Why do we do good? Why do we care for the sick? Yeah. Because I promise you, it's not just what human beings do, because they have not done that.
Right.
I mean, when I say by and large, and then the Western world has been so revolutionized by this man who we believe is the God-man, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I'm hearing from you is as you ask good questions, you can challenge people to zoom out their view of history in terms of where we are now. I think when we have too narrow a view of our context and where we are, it's easy to pick things apart. And you're saying, no, zoom out. Yeah. Understand the history of where we've come from, and you will have to understand and give credit to these ideas coming from Jesus from Christianity, from the Bible,
Yeah.
etc.
Like I'll give you another one and using, because I didn't get to it for the weekend, so I just explained Stoicism, but there were some Epicurean philosophers there. So those are the two big philosophies, and they didn't have the same worldview.
Yeah.
Yet, they would have understood those categories that I laid out.
Yeah.
But so Epicureans, they were pleasure seekers. So they definitely did not believe that the gods interfered. They were just going to eat, drink, sleep, live for tomorrow you die.
Yeah, YOLO.
And so so there was this pursuit of pleasure. But here's a question, because there is a form, and this is what's so interesting, is that things don't really change; they just take different forms.
Yeah.
Today, here in America, you have this. You have a complete. This would be a complete secular mindset that we have today, and so we're just going to pursue, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So pursue pleasure, whatever you want to do. But here's the thing. If you look at, if you took all those idols that we looked at, okay, and so look at some of those idols, again, in America. So, we had Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. So Las Vegas would be good pleasure-seeking things. Also, you could have money, kind of that drive for money being pleasure-seeking things. If you elevate pleasure to the role of the supreme God in your life, it will always cause pain. It will always, and most of the time it's going to cause pain to you, but it will also cause pain to others. So think about workaholics. So if you get pleasure out of work, but you take work and you make it your ultimate pleasure, then now you are so addicted to work that it not only can interfere and hurt you and cause pain in your health and create this undue stress. Like, so in 2008, when we had the Great Recession, do you know where the rise in suicides came? People who had money in the stock market.
Right.
But also, here's what we know about workaholics and pursuing pleasure that way. Most of the time when they're workaholics and they're married and have a family, who suffers?
Yeah, the family.
Yeah. The spouse, the children.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm saying. So really, when you pursue, and then so think about sexuality. If you pursue pleasure, I'm trying to be PC here, but when you pursue pleasure and you make it your ultimate God, and you have multiple partners, you do then there's something that happens to you psychologically and emotionally and mentally that even secular counselors and therapists see.
Yeah.
So do you really think that the God that you are pursuing in pleasure is a benevolent God that's going to hurt you? So that's where you can actually begin to ask questions of going, how beneficial is your pleasure? Like, is it fully satisfying you, or is it leaving you hungry for more? Because what we know, again, this is the reconstruction, is that the only way to be fully satisfied, and this is what St. Augustine would say, this is interesting about St. Augustine, is that prior to him coming to faith in Jesus, he was there was another philosophy that he pursued, but it was very similar to Epicureanism. Just pursuit of pleasure in multiple parts. I mean, he was very wealthy, lived large, but he was always hungry. And that's where, until your soul is satisfied in your Creator and that personal connection you have with Him, you'll never be satisfied. And that pleasure that you seek to feel, through all these other things, will always leave you hungry and many a times completely broken. So those are...
That's a great question.
Yeah, so those are great questions and even topics to explore with people, because there's a lot of people out there, man, like pursuing pleasure, like, again, pursuing the pleasure of likes. I mean, listen, I'm a human being too, who is still in the process of being conformed more into the image of Jesus. So you better believe that when I post things, like there is that shot of dopamine that happens when people like.
Yeah.
And when I'm like, oh man, that post should have done better, I have to be careful that my identity and my fulfillment and my satisfaction isn't by the number of likes or the number of shares.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm being honest with you, you know. So I don't say, well, we need to help Pastor Josh out. We need to like more of his stuff. No. I'm just saying, like, I get it. Like, could you imagine?
Recognize it.
Could you imagine people who don't have Jesus? Like, that's what they live for.
Yeah.
That's why they take the selfies. So
well, and that, you know, just a quick point on that. When you ask the question, how beneficial is your pleasure? If someone is really going to reflect on that, man, that's a wide open door, because they're then, you know, there's a natural progression in that conversation is, well, what does that look like in your life?
Yeah.
What does that look like in your life? And it doesn't look like perfection, obviously, but it looks like, for us, for Kayla and I, we rarely post on social media because because of that draw, because we saw that it was this challenge and unhealth, and we didn't want to go there. That isn't always the answer, right? Engaging in culture isn't always, you know, stiff arming it, but for us, for that time, it was something that we'd be on a date, we would post, and we realized we're disengaged from each other.
Yeah.
Because we're engaging in what other people, you know. So even having those examples in mind, to help you connect and relate to culture when you ask a question like this, I think would be helpful. Because it's not helpful just to say, you know, basically lie, I'm all high and mighty, I don't deal with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, like, you know, the questions that they typically is, well, how do you know there's a God? Well, here's the thing: how do you know that there's not?
Yeah.
How do you know that there's not?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's where I'm like, if we, and again, we're not trying to ask gotcha questions, because many times they're, you know, and then, oh, the Bible's so full of errors, you know, like that. And again, and we've dealt with this in other series and other messages, but again, there are always these gotcha questions. But that's why I would always kind of go back to the larger story. Well, how do you make sense of the world?
Yeah.
Because you're sitting here picking apart kind of how I'm making sense of the world, but how do you make sense of the world? Like, I'm
curious.
This is one of the things, because that's one of the things that I at least take away from Acts 17. At least they were open. Hey, you have some strange ideas. Will you tell us more about this?
Yeah.
You know, so there was, and it wasn't a like a facetious joking around type of, you know, here come, let's hear, you know, like,
sure.
That's why Luke is saying they did this all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, you got some strange things. Come up here. We'll judge, you know, what you're saying, but hey, we're open.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the way I want to close, I want to do one question before we close, but I want to spend a little bit of time in the close talking about kind of what we have the next 2 weeks looking forward, the trip that you have, the trip that I have. But before we get there, what's maybe one more, let's pick one of those idols. So Boston, New York, or LA are a couple that I pulled out. What's one of those that you want to talk about more?
Oh my gosh.
6 of them, you get to choose one.
How about I just talk? I'm going to go real quick. How about rapid fire? I'm going to give you things that I didn't say.
For all of them? Okay.
Maybe without.
We'll go rapid fire.
Rapid fire. I'll just look at. All right. So in this idea of education and intelligence, and you understand that the seedbed of innovation and technology is knowledge, right?
Yeah.
The pursuit of intellect. Well, here's what Wonder Woman said in Justice League about technology. Technology is like any other power. Without reason, without heart, it destroys us. So here's the thing. If you don't have anything guiding the pursuit of knowledge, if you don't have anything guiding something that is rooted you, grounded you, then it will always come back to destroy you, which is why when I watched that movie Oppenheimer, he struggled with it because he didn't have any guide. Like, there was something like, should I even be building this?
Yeah.
Because if I build this, it is going to change the world. And then it began this whole nuclear arms race for these superpowers, because now we're all on edge about who's going to destroy who. Okay? Well, that's the God of knowledge. That's the God of intellect. That's the God of truth, right? Okay, so again, that's a way of deconstructing.
Sure.
And so freedom, money, power, work. Just I think that's the part when you look at all of these different shows that like I mentioned. I mean, you just see greed. And that's where like it, and these people that want to be fans of socialism or even communism and not capitalism because it's greed. Listen, you're gonna find greed in socialism and communism. I mean, like, come on now. Like, let's be intellectually honest about this idea of the human nature that whoever is in power wants to stay in power. Okay, so let's not be naive about that. But here's what we know. Again, the whole Reconstruction is that regardless of whether we are in a constitutional republic and capitalistic society, socialistic or communistic or whatever it may be, like we can be free indeed because we are in the King and his identity. All right. So DC, talk about identity politics. This is where I would just say that this is where we have to be very careful with this idea of Christian nationalism because that is an identity politic where there's this group of people trying to force people to be Christian, and that is just not the way of Jesus. And what that actually does, it leads to abuse, it leads to violence, it leads to hatred, it leads to everything that Jesus did not embody. So that's another thing that I would want to say. And then the last is that I could have put, it actually broke. We had a LeBron James bobblehead doll, and we were going to put that on LA because sports. Yeah, there are a lot of times people have elevated sports and. I actually love the TV series, and don't judge me, but I love the TV series. It's actually an Apple TV series, Ted Lasso. Oh yeah, and so there's a character in Ted Lasso called Roy Kent, and Roy was this incredible soccer player. Would probably, if it was a real story, I mean, he would go into the Football Hall of Fame, not soccer, because they don't call soccer over there. It's football. Yeah. But when he retired, he didn't know who he was because he had made football his life. Yeah. And so here's how you know. Here's how you know if you've elevated something to godlike size is that if you no longer have it, it leaves you empty. And so say that again. So if you no longer have it, it leaves you empty. It leaves you confused as to who you are. So he had to reinvent himself, and that's the reason why just using somebody like Roy Kent is that you were never like playing football is incredible. Use your God-given talent to glorify the Lord for the good of people because people loved watching Roy Kent play. They would chant his name. But the Reconstruction is that when you root your identity in Jesus Christ and that who he is, you are. What he has, you have. And to know that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That means that your identity in him is completely secure today, tomorrow, and throughout all eternity. And so therefore, you don't have to worry about whether or not you have something or don't have something, whether or not you have him or don't have him, is that you have everything you need in him and you truly do lack nothing. So, amen. That's what I want to go through. Good job. Because we live in such a culture where we elevate sports. Sports is our God. Yes. And so I'm going to tell you, what happens when you no longer have the sports? What happens when you don't get into the college you want? What happens when you don't make it to the major leagues, or the NBA? Or your team doesn't win. You need a TV. So let's that's a great place to stop there. Let's look forward to the next couple weeks. So you're getting on a plane. Where are you going? What are you doing? And what's Extra Takes going to look like for these next 2 weeks? And I can answer that for you if you don't know. Answer that for me. I know I'm taking some supplies with me. So Pastor Gus and I, we are going to Egypt. I'll be preaching at our partner church, Casa de la Barra. Did I say that right? Casa El Dabara. There you go. Hooked on phonics. So we're going to the partner church. I will make sure I'll just say KDEC. KDEC, that works. I can say that. so we're going there, and then Pastor Gus and I, we're only going to be there for about 2.5 days, and then we're meeting the group that's doing the Footsteps of Paul. So we have a full itinerary doing most of the locations that Paul went during his second missionary journey. And that's where extra takes will be from at these places.
Yes.
I'll do some video shoots and, give you updates throughout the duration of that trip.
Yeah, the idea for those, so there'll be 2 weeks of extra takes where Pastor Josh and Pastor Gus will be recording. Certainly audio. We're hoping you'll do video as well, as long as technology cooperates. But the idea is that first week will be a bit of a looking forward to where you're going. What do you hope for? What are your thoughts about the locations that you're going to be going to? And then that second week, you would have experienced a lot of that by then. So it will be a time of reflection. How are you reading some scripture differently? How, what are some of the things that the group is processing and learning, and what's some of the teaching that's happening? And
I can't, because I've been watching some documentaries. We're going to go to Laodicea, and we know that the Laodiceans, or the church at Laodicea, was one of the 7 churches in Revelation.
Yeah.
And we also know that Paul sent a letter to the church at Laodicea, but we don't have it, because he even says it in his letter to the church at Colossae.
Right.
But I was watching this documentary where they actually have uncovered where the church would have met in Laodicea, and it's actually a very large building.
Really?
It's so I can't wait to go there, and they've actually covered it to preserve it even more.
Okay.
I can't wait to go.
Was that the lukewarm church?
Well, yeah, and so I'll explain the lukewarm, because it actually showed some of the springs up in the mountains, and so anyways, we'll talk through that. So
awesome.
Looking forward to that.
And then myself, Pastor Derwin, Hannah, and Nathaniel will be just missing you guys, because we're heading to Egypt on Sunday, and we'll be there for about 10 days, and we're going to their KDEC's partnership conference. Yeah. So they're bringing their international partners to the region, and we're going to get to hear the updates from their global workers from all around that region. We're having a couple day of a larger prayer conference that they put on that'll include a good chunk of their church, and then Call to All with Bill Wolf. So we're excited to extend and deepen that partnership. So we'll be back together in 3 weeks' time doing another extra takes. But I'm looking forward to those videos with you and Pastor Gus. We're not quite sure what to expect when you two. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. You guys do not want to miss it, I am sure. So we're under 45 minutes. We'll leave it there.
Under 45 minutes. But just remember, as we looked at this past week, is that we, as followers of Jesus, we truly are part of this new creation, this new world. And I actually, so you can be praying about this. I mean, I know it's a whole year, but I actually started thinking about an Easter series in 2025. And I don't know what I would call it, but it would be around the idea of the already but not yet, because I think that's really confusing to people. Or it's not confusing to some, but it's confusing to probably a lot. Yeah. Because what we're saying is that when Jesus, when he died and rose again, he has ushered in new creation, and it's already here, but it's not fully yet. Because I think, for people who are new to Christianity or hearing Christianity for the first time, is like, you tell me about this new world, but I don't fully see it. Right. And that's part of where I want to explore that, because what you're seeing are what we call, in some sense, these first fruits. These glimpses, they're not, and so I actually started thinking, because, as I processed even the Easter message, like I really did. I loved putting together this message. Yeah. I loved where it ended. Obviously, we pray for the fruit that we've seen just from just a text-in standpoint. But I'm like, okay, all right, well, because you talk about this whole new world where people are like, man, but we still suffer, we still die, there's still, like, so when you talk about this new creation, that there's no diseases, I don't see that yet.
Right. Yeah.
And so I want to unpack that more of explaining the already but not yet kingdom and the tension there, so that we can have this even fuller picture of Jesus' death and resurrection and how we are living out these implications of new creation, waiting for Jesus' second return. So that's what I think I'm going to do in 2025. But stay tuned. I'm going to pray through that. But I thought that would be one more little extra take that we could end on.
I like that.
So, Northland family and friends, thank you. Thank you for making this past Easter weekend what it was, where God was glorified and many men, women, boys, and girls were drawn to Jesus. We love you. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.